Hello, everyone. We've made it to our last podcast. So, thank you guys so much, honestly, for being here, for sharing with us, exchanging with us. And this podcast was selfishly for me, okay? This topic, I can speak days on days on days on end, and our culture is something that has gone through many phases, okay? And in this day and age where post-BLM, it's being reevaluated, reimagined, we're not a commodity. It's really important that we have these discussions so that we can have a different mindset on how we see ourselves and how people see us. So today we are blessed. It was 4, then 3, then 2. There was emergencies that occurred. So we have 2 amazing people that I have curated for this event. And ironically, the universe was on our side because they actually knew each other more intimately than I thought, in the sense that mentor-mentee. So it's a full circle moment at BLAXPO, and I am blessed to be and witness this conversation. We want to thank everyone who's tuning in virtually. We can't see you, we can't hear you, but we appreciate you tuning in and enjoy this conversation. After this, we're gonna just head on out, and then you guys can kind of network and connect that way, and we'll have an hour left before we kind of close up the doors. But thanks again for supporting this cause. Thanks for being here, and I'll let you guys take it away.
Wow, this event is phenomenal. I feel like I'm out of breath, but we have to first give thank you to Nicole. You've done a phenomenal job.
Absolutely.
Curating this event, getting everyone here, and not only that, but just creating opportunities for everyone. So thank you. That's the first thing. Your team also, the 4 Brown Girls, amazing. Your team is super phenomenal. This event is great. So thank you for that, firstly. I guess then I should introduce myself. So my name is Daniella. My daytime job is I work in the anti-racism secretariat. I don't know why my voice is shaking. I've had a lot of Americano, sorry. So yeah, I lead 2 teams at the Federal Anti-Racism Secretariat. And we are a team of racialized people working to really enforce change to policy within government, across from government. So we look like you, we fight for you, we have the lived experiences, but I'm not here on behalf of that job. I just thought I'd give some context. On the side, I have a company called Code Switch, and I do consulting for marketing communications, for diverse and inclusive marketing and communication products. And Ivan gave me my first opportunity at 19 years old.
Wow.
Super crazy. I won't say how long it's been. But gave me my first opportunity straight out of school doing marketing and took me in as an intern at Universal Music. And you are a big part of who I am today, Ivan.
Thank you.
Opening that door, giving me the chance as a Black woman to step into that space and to own my space has contributed so much to who I am today. So thank you.
Oh my God, thank you very much. Wow. It's awesome. So thank you, Daniella, for that incredible introduction. My name is Ivan Evidente. I still work at Universal Music Canada. I've been holding the post there for the past 23 years now. I've been super blessed and grateful to be able to be working there. My exact title is Director of A&R. For those who may not know, that stands for Artist and Repertoire. My job specifically is to scout talent, discover it, essentially sign them, and develop them, and then sort of help them get their sort of vision out to the world. But prior to that, before working in that sort of department, I worked specifically in marketing, and that's sort of how we ended up meeting, even though I was there a few years prior to Daniella. But funny enough, just how the world works, energy, it's all about good energy, and Daniella was somebody, and I'm just going to jump into it to some degree about how we got it, but I remember Daniella, it was just one of those situations where I think you just had called me nonstop and just hitting me up, telling me, oh, I want to get into the music business. I think you were going to Humber at the time, and so forth, like relentless, you know what I mean? But it was that drive and that hunger that I knew that, like, I need somebody like this to just be on our team. And I don't think it was ever about necessarily for you about having an actual job and getting paid. It was just more about being in the mix, you know what I mean? Being passionate about something and then at the end of the day, just really doing all the research that you had to do in order to sort of get yourself in the room and be around people that like-minded, or just to get to those opportunities. And I think that's what absolutely attracted me to you, in terms of just that sort of go-getter mentality, which I have seen even to this day, even though she's gone on to bigger and better things past Universal Music. It's just sort of been that hunger that I've always admired. So yeah, shout outs to Daniella as well, everyone.
Very cool. Thank you. Talking about how we met, our team was called Universal Urban. And it's funny because I always say now in my job that I have the terminology, I have the words to explain things that I didn't know back then. And back then, Universal Urban, and the term urban to us was not negative. It was our team, and we didn't know that, you know, we were looked at differently because of that term, but we worked in urban music. We were the only racialized team, and we created the culture in that space.
Absolutely,
you know?
100%.
From Rihanna's first album to all of the things that we worked when the label didn't care about the black artists and the black music that was coming out. Sorry, I'm not putting you
No,
on
absolutely
this
no.
one. We went through those struggles of really championing black culture, specifically within music at that time, that nobody was championing it. So it's interesting to see that full circle moment that we're now in a panel called We Are the Culture, because a lot of times part of that hardship and the challenges in that job was to get people to respect the culture and understand what black culture was and what those artists was. And a lot of times, full circle, click, yay.
Yes, another Universal, wow, alumni right there.
Well,
David Click Cox, everyone. Okay, it's just what it is. Funny enough, when like I said, I work in A&R, and actually David Click Cox was the first A&R, at least that I knew, you know what I mean, at Universal, that worked specifically in black music, for sure. Julie Black was one of the signings that he was a part of, that he actually did, and that I was able to be a part of. So that's just crazy how this is all happening right now. I'm like, oh, God, Click.
So yeah, back to the urban culture. But Ives, I'm sure you remember those days that, you know, because it was a racial, I'll say, black artist, and I keep remembering Rihanna and this story of Rihanna when, you know, nobody really cared about who she was because she had just started. And, you know, most of the times those black artists would fluctuate to our team because we were the racialized ones. We understood the culture. We spoke the same way that they did. And that in itself was difficult. How did you navigate that, and how do you still navigate that, just walking through those hallways, those doors, and knowing that the culture is still something that needs to be fought for within the building?
No, that's a great question. I think, you know, prior to even working in sort of at the label, I started out my career as a DJ, right? And then eventually that moved into becoming a promoter and so forth. So I was just naturally around that sort of scene, you know what I mean? And I understood that this is the culture, you know, like this is where it actually happens. And so, and who are the movers and the shakers in those buildings that are the ones that actually that drive that? And so going to Universal, when I first got there, I realized that, wow, there weren't too many people that necessarily that I would see at the clubs, and they don't look like the people here right now, you know what I mean? But I was given the opportunity to build a team, and for me it was important to build it with the people that I recognized, that I felt looked like me, or I felt that understood it, that understood the culture, like you said. And to me, they were the real experts, you know what I mean, at it, because they're the ones that are in it. So for me, it was important to really just build a team of people where they weren't going to tell us about the culture. We're going to tell you about it, right? We're just happened to be in the building. But to your point, there was a time where I don't think that people really understood, like, the importance of understanding that in order to market those types of, that genre of music. You know what I mean? You have to really be in there. So how do I navigate it? It was just literally by surrounding myself around the actual experts in the genre, and at the same time being able to be vocal and empower them and explain to some of the powers that be in the building that these are the people who you need to be letting them make decisions, because if not, you know, especially in music where it's about culture, if you're not putting people that come from it, I'm sorry, but nobody gives a shit at that point. You know, and I mean that in the nicest way, meaning like, you know what I mean? You got to really put people like that. So I think for me, it was like having such a great team of people, of young, entrepreneurial spirited people, I think was the main ingredient in that whole thing.
That's a great point.
And I still do that to this day. I surround myself with interns all the time. I surround myself with just the younger generation that are coming up that really understand everything from social media to, and just, because I don't want to, go on too long about this, but it's literally just understanding those people that just have their finger on the pulse. If social media was like it was today, but it was back then, it would be a completely different story, in my opinion, in terms of just being able to stay on top of things. But yeah, the younger generation to me just always knows what's up, right? So might as well, like, if you can't beat them, join them, right? So
absolutely. It's great that you've actually shared that, because I think to this day in my career, when I'm navigating the boardrooms at the government, when I'm navigating boardrooms in my consulting business, we have a sentence we say, which is nothing about us without us. And I feel like from the moment that I was 19 years old, working with your team, working at the label, that's essentially what we were communicating, that they could not sell this culture without having our input or having our insight on how the culture functioned, because they were not in the streets, not that we were in the streets, but they were not in the clubs. They were not, participating in the culture. And so in order for that to be authentic, we felt that, I think the challenge was communicating to them that we are the culture that you're trying to sell. Yeah. The same people that you are overlooking, we are that culture that you need to authentically learn how to communicate with and how to sell to in order to sell this music. And to this day, that's still my motto, and a motto that I've learned through other people in the industry: nothing about us without us. That's what I go by all the time. If you want to have, culture, if you want your product, marketing, services, etc., to be authentic, it's about having the voices, lived experiences of the communities that you intend to work with. Because otherwise, how can it actually be relevant? How can you make sure that something is culturally sensitive? So nothing about us without us means, if you're designing a product, if you're a brand, you're a company, you can't be speaking on behalf of a community, a religious minority, without having someone from that community speak to that, consult that, inform that work. Otherwise, that's kind of how the cycle perpetuates itself.
Yeah. And further to that note, it's funny because you said that I gave you your first chance. The first person who gave me a chance was a black woman as well, who gave me my job. You know what I mean? So, and that's just real talk. And it was somebody who believed in me as well, and just my abilities. And it's sort of just, I'm always about that, just paying it forward and just lifting up the next generation. So, that's right.
Yeah, thank you. I guess I should go into these questions now.
Okay.
I don't have to.
We're just vibing out, right? It's vibes here.
Just vibing? Okay, cool.
This is great.
Cool. What you got?
Maybe. I don't know. We can look at some of the questions. Yeah.
How important is representation in the work that you do? I guess.
Do you want to start with you?
Sure. I guess I just touched to that more or less. Nothing about us without us. In my day role, our team is racialized. I have a focus on employing more racialized people. I lead 2 teams, and I specifically only hire racialized people because I know that the opportunities aren't given to them, whether they're indigenous, religious minorities, or racialized black people. I want them on our team. I want their lens involved in policy work that we're working in across government and all levels. And the same goes to my consulting business. I want to be able to inform the voices and the lived experiences of those communities with the brands that I work with and their products. And unless, I am aligned with people like that on my team, then I can effectively do that work, because I know about my experience as a black woman and my intersectionalities, but I don't know of every black person's experience. And that's another thing, is that, we are not a monolith. We all have different experiences. Whether we're all black, we can be black French speaking, we can be of different religions, we can have different intersectionalities and voices and experiences that I don't necessarily represent. So I think, it's making space for other people to be part of the conversation as well.
That's awesome. What a great, holy, that was amazing. No, but same. You know what I mean? I'm I'm like, double click. No, for me, I mean, it's the same sort of thing in the sense that, even for me, representation is so important. Like I work black music, and to be honest, I'm from Filipino background, and but even just for me, just having grown into this, I grew up on this, and I was taught, and I, as children of immigrants as well, and my whole childhood life I grew up with just people of color in general. So, you know, now that I've been so fortunate and be blessed to be working in music, especially in black music specifically, is what I actually work. Like, representation is extremely important. You have no idea, and I mean, sorry, not to put you out there, but how just even working in the record label system, how important it was for me to make sure that, like, we were just, you know, hiring people of color all day, especially just these are the experts, you know what I mean? So for me, it's extremely important. I also, I head up our BIPOC employee resource group at Universal Music, and I felt it was important for us to have different ERGs within the building, so representation is extremely, extremely important for me.
Thank you. What's next? I think you're up next for a question. Yeah?
Sure.
What do you think?
Oh, man.
You're like,
I'm
oh,
nervous.
man.
Yeah, dumb.
I'm trying to pick the right one. Who are some people in the industry who are effective at being unapologetic?
Like, click. Ian Andre Espinay. I mean, people in with the, you know, I feel like Click needs to come up here and explain what he knows, but like, or we could pass the mic. But are you talking? Yeah, like this is somebody, one of my mentors. Again, sorry, I don't want to put Click on the spot here, but like, he is somebody who's extremely.
And he actually started the story of how I worked at Universal, because I first emailed Click, who then told me to email Ivan, and then I bothered Ivan every day until I got a job. So you're also part of this full circle moment.
Yeah, let's bring Click up here, man. Like, seriously, it's vibes. I'm telling you, this is what this is about. Real talk. Sorry, Click, did I just put you like real? You know, but it's like you're an important person, man. Like, seriously, I love this guy. Like, these are. I've learned so much from both of these two here. It's just like a couple of, yeah. I'm sorry. Yeah. Somebody who the question was, who do I place unapologetic in my industry? Yeah. Click. Like, just tell them what you do.
It's interesting. Being unapologetically black is so empowering as a black person in 2022, 2023, because I couldn't do this in 2000. Nah. I'd be scared of losing my job. I'd be scared of the industry has changed a lot, especially in the last like 2-3 years, the entertainment industry. There's so many spaces, organizations, that are advocates and are fighting on our behalf. And actually, you're one of them right now. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, this event is doing exactly that. You know what I mean? And I think that, you know, what has happened in the last couple of years has empowered us to be not afraid to speak our voice, to speak our mind, to step into our power, to step into, like, what we have to offer as melanated, black, beautiful people. Do you know what I'm saying? And that's not something like that I felt like we necessarily came up in the game and was even talked to us, you know? I mean, we had a couple mentors that were all trying to figure it out themselves, you know? And I think that that's an important thing, the same way that, like, you reached out to me and I reached out to you and we all kind of lift each other up. We have to do that. That's, you know, that's how you build a community. That's how you build a village. Like, it has to happen in that way, you know? I worked at BMG Music before I worked at Universal. Ivan Berry, who managed Dream Warriors, Missy Me, all the old, you know, all the legendary artists. He's the one that, like, pulled me aside and said, like, yo, you need to apply for this job at Universal. And to be frank, I didn't think I was ready, but he convinced me that I was ready. So wherever he is, thank you. But I guess to answer your question, like, what I do now is I have a company called BDRB, and we do a lot of work in the Canadian industry in terms of making space and disrupting the space in regards to making sure our voices are being heard and that we are disrupting the space that exists so that more black people can work in the industry with the same sort of, I guess you could say, swag that I'm walking in with.
There is a question, so I will get to that real quick. I do want to answer that question, though, because somebody that always comes to mind when I think about being Black and apologetic is Amanda Paris. And I always refer to her, and you may have seen her on CBC, you've seen her host thousands of things, but what I think is most important or sticks out to me the most about her, she's able to tie the narrative of the past, present, and future. And I think one of these questions talks about how to combat appropriation, and part of it is telling the story. We have to cite, credit the past history, the legends, the pioneers, the people who've set the foundation, the people who are currently doing, and as Click said, open the door for the people coming after us. So I feel that she does that really well, and that's exactly what you were talking about, is actually just, you know, kind of leading the way for the next person to go through, but also acknowledging the history or the pioneers that have come before that. Trying to think about, let's go back to that swag question. Since you mentioned swag, how has Black swag influenced your industry?
Completely? I don't know, like totally, everything.
It is it?
It is it? I wouldn't.
It is it. I don't.
Yeah.
I don't think it's it. I think it's like, I don't think there's an industry without
Absolutely.
our culture. Do you know what I'm saying? Without our voice, without our walk, our talk, our drip. Do you know what I'm saying? Like
At Universal, it's called the Black Music Department. now.
Yes.
Like specifically, like that's what it is called. You know what I mean? So like that answer is like absolutely.
But I do think there's still education is
Oh.
severely like an ongoing thing.
Absolutely.
Like I don't think education is just something that happens like, okay, we did it once and all of a sudden everybody knows now.
Right.
It has to be continuously, and it's actually a conversation I've had a lot with a lot of peers in Canada. It's like I don't feel like we toot our horn enough in Canada. Like I feel like Americans will let you know every month, every day, like, yo, so-and-so did this, and they'll repeat it every friggin' month over your head. And there's no like feeling of like like it's being hitting over the head. It's more like, oh yeah, it's like a celebrated thing. But here it's like, we're very conservative. We're very like, you know, kind of laid back. And I would really encourage all of you not to have that type of thought process. You know, I teach at the Remix Project. I was just telling these students like a week ago, I was like, you know, some of them were talking about barriers and roadblocks they have in front of them. And I said, I think a lot of it's conditioning. You know, you've been conditioned to feel a certain way, conditioned to act a certain way. But that conditioning can be broken once you acknowledge that it exists. You know? So I feel like when it comes to what we want and how we move in these spaces, it's just breaking down that conditioning within our own mindset.
Yeah, it sounds easy. It sounds really easy, but until you're actually empowered and encouraged to do that, I think there could be twofolds. There's the one person who could plow through and get that done that way. For me, I think until I stepped into a space, until I stepped into the anti-racism secretariat, and literally my boss was like, this is your job. If something happens that's wrong, you call it, you name it. You're allowed to say this is systemic racism. It's your job to call out these things by what they are. You need to say specifically what these things are with their terminology. Sometimes it's being encouraged in that sense. And as you said earlier, sometimes we don't have the words to describe what those things are. And once we do, and we're empowered with those words, and we start to name these things in these spaces, we have an opportunity to educate others as to what our experience is. And while they may never fully know, we still have the opportunity to impart them with what it might be like to us to experience that. How has Black swag influenced your industry, Ivan?
It's everything. I mean, listen, it's everything. From, you know, especially in the music, so it's the fashion, it's just the music, and just all the music that the different other genres, you know what I mean, from that is influenced by that. So it's absolutely, like, it's not really much more I can say outside of that's just what it is, you know. So and I'm super fortunate to be able to be a student of it every day, and then be at the same time to educate not just the staff that's been there, but just at the same time empowering the next year that's coming up, right? And how we got to keep that going.
Thank you. Is that time? Do you have time for another question? I have time for another question. Amazing. How do we reclaim our identity in a system working against people of color?
education is one of them. I think it is. I think it's building a community. It's like building a movement because like it's really hard if you go into a door by yourself saying this needs to be changed and boom, boom, boom. But if we actually like form as a unified unit knocking on that door, you can't really be ignored. You know what I'm saying? So I really believe in the power of movement, the power of community building, but it also takes leaders to lead people. Do you know what I mean? So if anybody has that burning desire to speak up, don't be afraid. Like we need people like that, you know, because I realize not everybody is a leader. Some are soldiers. You know what I'm saying?
We all have a role.
Exactly.
We all have a role to play, so that's good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Did that answer the question, or you want more? You know?
I was gonna say, what were your thoughts? Because obviously,
yeah. What's your thoughts?
Sector now. I think a lot of this is more music, but interesting to hear from your perspective.
Education is a big part of it. Identity, I think, you know, to get to a place where you're reclaiming your identity, I was thinking about it this morning, you have to first know who you are. What is it that you're trying to reclaim? What is it that originally belongs to you that you want to have be part of your narrative, of your brand, of your story, of your history? So I think education is the biggest piece. And again, once you're educated with those pieces, you can move forward and kind of educate others and lead with that narrative, leading forward with the narrative of who you are, what your culture is, what's important to you, and represent in those facets. So for me, I think the biggest piece is first knowing yourself. Mm-hmm. It's hard. The system. I say the system, but it's systems. The systems that work against us, unfortunately, take more than us knowing ourselves to be broken down. But I think that a big part of being able to navigate those systems unwaveringly is being grounded in who you are, because those systems, unfortunately, will always exist.
And the grounded is such an important thing. The grounded is actually like really needed, because fighting the system is exhausting. You know, I've been fighting the system a long time, and sometimes I have to check myself and be grounded to be like, okay, can I go on another day doing this? Yeah. Do you know what I'm saying?
That's real.
So it's like, it's super important. The reclaiming of spaces is also hard sometimes, and the education you're talking about, the thing that comes to mind for me is like, it can't also be done in like a billboard way. Mm-hmm. I'm kind of getting over that idea. What I mean by that is like, you can't stand with a picket and expect everybody to get it. What I find is like, so right now with BDRB, we've been doing a monthly workshop with a Canadian.
Do people know what BDRB even stands for? I don't know if any.
Can you break it down for us?
Can you break it down?
Break it down. Racial barriers, right? And we started it with the company SEMA, which is like the Canadian Independent Music Association, and Advance, which is the Black Music Business Professional Association. So the three of us came together to create space to hear our voices in the industry. And then we created a declaration, we created a report that kind of echoed what we felt, what we're feeling in this industry. But sometimes that comes off as very performative to some people, and they're like, okay, well, what are you actually doing? So now we're doing something called Next Steps, which brings all the calls for all the industry companies and organizations that come to the table and learn best practices, like giving them actionable practices of like, this is what needs to be done.
Holding them accountable.
But the challenge I found with that, like, yeah, you can send out email blasts and you can do all those things, but I found the most effective ways have been one-on-one, like me contacting Live Nation's HR person and saying, you need to be at this HR training. Or me contacting the president of Warner and saying, hey, you have to have your whole department come to the HR training. You signed the pledge, didn't you? Do you know what I'm saying? Like, so like, when you talk about being unapologetically Black, I'm definitely that. Do you know what I mean?
You are.
But you have to do that to get people to pay attention, and then you kind of hold them accountable on these things. But when you're talking about reclaiming, that's the one thing I feel like in Canada is like, we really have to like because they will sit on their hands. They will sit on their hands. So you kind of have to say, nah, man, you can't fucking sit on your hands.
Yeah.
Sorry, I can get very radical.
You just, you just made me think about a story. So a few months ago, I was working with a large agency on a project. It's a $1 million campaign, and it was about anti-racism. And they didn't have a racialized person at the table. And we were going around months and months and months on concepts. And I'm like, finally, I was like, look, you're not going to nail this until you have racialized people on your team. And I said, ironically, what it is that we're trying to build in this campaign, you're perpetuating by not having someone in a decision-making seat at your company. And they came back the next week and they're like, well, meet John and Sarah. We just hired them and they're 2 interns. And I'm like, you still don't get it. You still don't get it. You haven't empowered a racialized person, a black person, indigenous person to speak on a topic that doesn't impact you. So yeah, that made me think about what you just said about sometimes you need to call out those things when you see them, just as you were saying with the HR team. You know, if there aren't more of us at the table, at the seat, if we're not making space for that, then we can only expect the system to continue failing us. The systems, keep forgetting.
The hardest thing in our industry, though, is the numbers. Like, asking a company to hire a particular person that's looking for certain expertise and looking for certain, benchmarks in the individual is hard in our industry because there's really not a lot of us that have been at certain levels. So, and then especially it's so messed up to think for example, the live industry is just to put it on the table. We're gonna go after the live industry in the next little bit because it's the worst part of our entertainment business. Go to a show and tell me how many black people you see running the lights, running doing the sound, and a lot of that is unionized, which is IATSE, and it's 1-2% people of color that are in a hot seat. It's disgusting, and so it's there's a lot of battles that need to be done in these spaces, and a lot of the challenges that we face when we go and have the conversations is well, where do we pull them from? So where do we start? We got to go to junior high schools. We got to go and tell this kid that loves electricity that, hey, being an electrician, there's a job in the music industry for that shit. Do you know what I mean? It's letting them know. We did a panel and I had an accountant watching, and she was like, a business manager? What's that? I'm like, yeah, could you imagine if you were Drake's business manager? How much money you'd be making? You know what I'm saying? These are real professions.
Or entertainment law in itself.
Exactly.
Right? We get a lot of that as well. Yeah, so.
You're also tied in.
Yeah, it's the
good.
conversation is amazing. Let's end it with the last one, the soundtrack question, just to end it light, end it really light, and then on that note, we'll give our final goodbyes.
If your life was a soundtrack, what would it be and why? A whole soundtrack or a song?
You guys decide. You guys are the experts.
That's actually really hard. We work in music, and we think soundtrack.
That's
we know
why
this.
I picked that question. I'm
every
I
song
came
is
up with
my
that question
song.
for you guys.
Songs go in my head. I'm like, no, that's not the good song.
Well, I'm going to go first.
You know what I mean?
I'll say 2 songs. My Life, Mary J. Blige, because I feel like that speaks to,
Yes.
so many things. I guess everybody has a personal story with that. And then Closer by Guapele, because whenever I feel that I'm achieving a new height, that's my jam. That's my joint.
I love that.
Yeah. So that's it for me.
Wow. I don't. Oh man. And it's not even I rate this song, but since we're talking about certain I don't know, Journey, Don't Stop
scared.
Believing or something this is let's just
It's a
keep
good song.
fight
It's a
the
good
power,
song.
fight the power, Public Enemy,
That's a good
fight
one.
the power.
That's a good one.
That's
a good
it.
One. That's a good
No,
one.
for real though, right?
That's a good one.
Right?
That's a good one.
That's a good one, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry, I'm whack.
Man, I don't know. I mean, James Brown, I'm black and proud. You know what I'm saying? That's some shit that comes in my head. But then I hear the horns, I'm like, oh, Scoogly D. My mind goes to so many places, you know what I mean? There's so many good songs. I have actually playlists. I should pull it out and look at the playlist. I have like a playlist. I'm a playlist, like, I just have so many of them. It's crazy, but I don't know. The James Brown one's dope. That's such like
Yeah, James Brown was a dope one. A dope one. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.
Thank you.
Thanks for pulling me up here.
No,
I'm sorry.
we're clicking Daniella,
I got a
please.
big mouth, so I could go on and on and on. I'm like, you shouldn't have brought me up here, you know?
No, it's great. It's great.